The battle between the hero and the Demon King destroyed everything around them. The hero provoked the Demon King to unleash his ultimate move to end the battle, then used a single strike that shattered a massive boulder into hundreds of pieces, followed by releasing an incredibly powerful aura. He charged forward to fight the Demon King one-on-one, his attack possessing devastating destructive power that cracked the ground around them both. After the battle, both looked completely wrecked, yet they still dragged themselves toward each other to deliver one final blow. The sword pierced through both the hero's and Demon King's hearts, ending the tragic battle. At a certain academy, a young man with black and white hair looked around, extremely excited to begin his school life. His name was Blade, a transfer student who seemed quite curious about everything around him. Blade was hyperactive and making friends from all directions. On just the first day, thanks to his lively personality, Blade had already befriended a group including Cassim Clay, two girls named Jessica and Claire. Suddenly, a red-haired girl came over to scold the group for being noisy in the hallway. Cassim introduced Blade to the loud girl before them, Arnett, the student council president, also known as the Queen Empress. Blade immediately greeted her without thinking. When Arnett learned Blade was a transfer student, she became very suspicious because this was a hero academy where only those possessing strong will and burning desire to become heroes protecting the world could enroll. So how could Blade be admitted midway like this? When Arnett discovered Blade's intention was just to make friends, she became furious and scolded him for being irresponsible with his own decisions. But Blade didn't care and casually asked her to take him to the principal's office. Arnett was speechless but had to accompany and guide him. When they entered the principal's office, it turned out the person in charge was an arrogant-looking old man with blonde hair. Arnett immediately knelt down in panic and pushed Blade's head down when he didn't understand what was happening. She made him kneel to show respect to the person before them. It turned out he was the newly appointed principal, a great military officer according to Arnett's account. She admired him greatly and excitedly expressed herself in various ways, leaving Blade beside her speechless at this senior. The principal told Arnett to leave to give him and Blade space to talk, which made her extremely jealous, glaring at Blade intensely. It turned out Blade knew this new principal from before. The old man greatly hoped Blade would restore his original hero power. The principal came here to revise the curriculum. Blade asked about the Demon King, and the old man informed him there were reports that both the Demon King and the hero died simultaneously from each other's stab. The old man believed Blade would restore his power soon and laughed like he was high on something. Blade didn't understand what the old man was thinking either. At the training ground for upper-class students, Arnett was observing the students' training progress when suddenly Blade came to chat with her, confusing her. It turned out he came here after taking a test from the lower class. Under the whispers of people around them, Arnett directly questioned whether Blade used connections to get into the upper class. Because how else could a new student already be in the upper class like this? He wasn't serious at all. While Arnett was still confused, Blade suddenly ran off to make friends everywhere, driving her crazy. But suddenly the opportunistic Blade patted the girl's head, making her blush with embarrassment. She drew her sword intending to send Blade to heaven. But somehow he easily dodged it to everyone's surprise and confusion. A blue-haired girl came to report the officer's summons. Blade was very excited to befriend her and enthusiastically clung to the blue-haired girl, forcing her to introduce herself as Sapphire. Arnett was very irritated with this student, so she requested the instructor to let Blade have a match. She made him hold a sword and stand before a super intimidating suit of armor, requiring Blade to slash the armor to evaluate his strength. Otherwise, he would be asked to transfer out of the school. Blade accepted and immediately went all out, releasing an intimidating aura. A white light gathered around him, the power of the dragon-breaking style, making everyone around gape in amazement. He used his strength to shatter the armor into hundreds of pieces, and the energy from the sword aura also tore Arnett's clothes standing nearby, revealing her stunning figure. Arnett was blown away and all the upper-class students except Sapphire who remained standing were knocked to the ground. The sword in his hand also shattered. Arnett couldn't understand who this guy was to be so incredibly strong, but Blade insisted he was just a normal student, which even I wouldn't believe. At the school cafeteria, Blade came to sit across from Arnett who was eating alone. When he saw his friends Cassim Clay, Jessica, and Claire, he warmly invited them to sit at the table, but they were scared and refused upon seeing him sitting with Arnett. Blade wondered if she was being bullied, but Arnett reminded him they didn't dare sit with her because she was too strong. She watched Blade devour delicious food speechlessly. After witnessing his strength, Arnett took back her words about Blade entering the academy through connections, but Blade didn't care much. He was very grateful for Arnett's companionship and help. Blade wanted to be friends with her. Though embarrassed, Arnett quickly agreed, surprising the students around them. That evening in Arnett's private room, she took off all her clothes wearing only underwear and hugged her pillow lying on the bed. Arnett thought about Blade asking to be friends and happily rolled around on the bed. Suddenly the sword hanging on the wall trembled, reminding her of when she was little. Arnett became the sword's master due to its seduction, and from then her hair turned bright red. The source of Arnett's power came from the sword. At this moment she was struggling to control it. The next morning at the training ground, Arnett was fighting a blonde guy named Leonard. Blade sat nearby watching excitedly and continuously cheering. Just when Arnett seemed about to lose, she struck back, sending the blonde guy flying with one blow. Just as she almost stabbed him in anger, her reason told her to stop. Everyone around noticed something was off with Arnett. Suddenly Sapphire rushed out to fight Arnett one-on-one. She quickly threw punches and skillfully dodged, avoiding many of Arnett's dangerous moves. Arnett used her ultimate move with fire magic to quickly overwhelm Sapphire, making her raise her hand in surrender. Arnett turned back intending to challenge Blade despite her exhausted body, but suddenly an intense flame erupted in her mind, making Arnett's hands tremble as she dropped her sword and collapsed. Fortunately, Blade caught her in time and took her to the infirmary. The doctor revealed Arnett's condition was caused by a curse on her. She woke up worried she had done something terrible when she lost control. But thanks to Blade's reassurance, Arnett immediately got up intending to leave despite the doctor's advice. She told him to absolutely not reveal this to anyone. That evening he went to the old man's laboratory, used a magic stone to open the lab door, and used technology to find out Arnett's sword was named Asmodeus. The next morning, knowing the information about her sword, he went to find Arnett despite her suspicions. On the rooftop, Blade explained the sword had consciousness and granted its master great power, but she wasn't mature enough to control it. It turned out she had touched the sword out of curiosity when she was little. Since then it had tried to take control of her body many times, but fortunately Arnett was stubborn enough to always suppress it. Blade encouraged her to force the sword to acknowledge her as its master. Though worried, Arnett believed Blade could help her. That night Arnett performed the ritual. She appeared in a dark space and met the demon Asmodeus. She decided to fight the demon with her own strength. Outside, Blade witnessed the flames surrounding Arnett transform into all sorts of bizarre things. Inside her consciousness, Arnett summoned the sword and charged up to one-shot the demon, then fell down while not wearing anything. Blade stepped forward to catch her. The next day she appeared at the academy in a cute dress, making everyone very happy about this change. At the school training ground, Blade was fighting with two upper-class students. He calmly dodged while the two tried their hardest. Arnett rushed over to scold Blade. He noticed her change, which made her secretly happy inside. Leonard behind nudged Blade to signal him. Blade acted like he understood but expressed he didn't know what changed about Arnett, leaving both Arnett and Leonard speechless. Despite the blonde continuously attacking Blade for not noticing Arnett's changed hairstyle, both Blade and Arnett ignored him. They looked towards Sapphire, who was actively training. Arnett explained that Sapphire only knew how to follow orders from others and never initiated conversation. But thanks to Blade, Sapphire had actually said her own name. So Arnett assigned Blade to actively change this blue-haired girl. Seeing Blade actively chat and offer to teach her swordsmanship, Sophia kept asking if it was an order, leaving him speechless. Blade was still asking her opinion and almost succeeding when the instructor announced training was over, leaving Blade visibly dejected. But when he turned back to look at Sapphire, she actively turned back and smiled for the first time. At the training ground, Blade was having her practice breaking armor with a sword. At first Sapphire only caused minor damage to the armor, but thanks to Blade's demonstration, in just a short time by afternoon, Sapphire had become proficient with the sword and slashed through each suit of armor. She asked Blade if her level was enough to beat Arnett. Upon hearing his uncertain answer, she immediately threw away the useless sword and used a flip to pin Blade down. She wanted to prove she was stronger. Sophia hoped Blade would teach her more before leaving. The next morning at the office, the principal was sitting next to a beautiful woman while Blade casually sat drinking tea across from them. He heard the principal mock him for not having close friends, making him very annoyed. When the old man heard Blade was befriending Sapphire, he didn't seem surprised, as if the principal had known for certain he would be impressed by the girl. He mentioned Sophia was related to the Artificial Hero Project, which greatly confused Blade. The principal explained this project used forbidden knowledge lost from ancient times. They modeled people with potential to create heroes whose power continuously increased through learning. He revealed the girl's original name was Sophisha Femto, the 12th clone in that project. When Blade learned Sapphire was treated like a puppet, he became furious and tried to slash the old man. But fortunately, the old man explained he had shut down that despicable organization long ago, which calmed his grandson down a bit. Blade deeply regretted that his existence was why those people wanted to create the artificial hero Sapphire. He was determined to help the girl have a more normal life, but he himself didn't understand what normal meant. Grandfather and grandson went everywhere to learn about the concept of normal. The nurse said one needed youth to be normal. He went to ask Leonard about youth and only heard vaguely that it required love. Blade hastily met the group of Jessica and Claire, asking what the heck that was. Finally, after Blade learned dating required love, He blocked Arnett's door to ask, making her blush thinking he was confessing, and she explained various couple activities. When she learned Blade was going on a date, Arnett immediately exploded with jealousy. At the women's bath, when he found out Sophia was inside, he didn't hesitate to break down the door and rush in to see quite an eye-pleasing sight. Sophie was naked drying her hair when she received Blade's date invitation and immediately agreed. The female friend group, including Arnett, Jessica, and Claire together, followed Blade and Sophie from afar, but they were immediately distracted by delicious red bean bread. Arnett met Sophie feeling very confident because he had read books beforehand. Though his schedule was a bit too detailed, Sophie pointed out they were 4 minutes past the meeting time, but she proactively linked arms with Blade to reassure him. After that, the Arnett group watched the two being very intimate, walking together, enjoying scenery and eating ice cream. When both of them went fishing, Arnett, Jessica, and Claire were diving below doing silly things, looking absolutely ridiculous. The next location was a game arcade. Both were first-timers with no experience. Blade and Sophia one-shot destroyed the arcade machine, forcing the 3 girls to stay behind, apologizing and compensating the owner to bail the 2 out. After that, they both went to drink coconut water together. Since Sophie was very thirsty, she didn't follow the plan and drank coconut water with Blade looking like a couple. But when he touched cheeks with Sophie, his heart immediately raced, and he jumped away. Though she didn't understand anything, she needed him to complete drinking coconut water together, making Blade approach and drink with Sophie despite blushing with embarrassment. The Arnett group was sitting nearby. While Arnett was enjoying delicious food and getting all flustered, the other 2 had disappeared somewhere, making them frantically follow closely. Blade, checking the schedule, saw they were almost late, but Sophie was very calm. She held his hand and used light speed with the city walls as leverage to fly up into the sky, hopping around the city like people on drugs. That evening, Blade and Sophie sat at the fountain talking with each other. Sophie expressed she was very happy and also wondered why Blade invited her along. He expressed it was because he considered her a friend. Hearing that, Sophie reminded him a friend wouldn't keep secrets from the other person. She then confessed she was an artificial hero, and her power was given to her by scientists. To prove it, she made the nearby railing become soft and bendy. The power of an artificial hero was changing physical properties, but she could only use it for 10 seconds. Sophie reminded him she was the 12th clone of a girl with the same name, the last model and most successful product of the project. Hearing that, Blade no longer hid and revealed to her he was also once a hero. He deeply regretted toward her, believing he was the cause of all of Sophie's misfortunes. From age 3, he had already manifested latent hero power, and always had to continuously fight monsters while being swallowed by expectations from those around him. Sophie then hugged Blade to comfort him. She shared that she had traveled everywhere witnessing many people being saved from suffering by a hero's power. She didn't resent him at all, but greatly admired Blade. She always wanted to become a strong artificial hero, saving people just like a real hero. This freed Blade from his troubles about once bearing the hero title. They also promised this secret would only be known to them. While sitting with the group of girls, Blade was eating very deliciously because this was his favorite dish. Seeing that, Sophie took out a tissue to wipe for Blade. In Arnett's eyes, that action was extremely intimate, so she blushed and scolded the 2. Suddenly, the group of Cassim, Clay, Jessica, and Claire came to chat with them. Jessica and Claire wanted Blade to notice their change. Arnett understood their intention and congratulated the group on moving up to the upper class. Suddenly, Leonard saw pretty girls and approached them. His excessive enthusiasm made the girls uncomfortable. Arnett felt helpless and told Leonard to shut his mouth. Getting into the main story, she revealed there was information that the king had brought a magical beast to the academy. This scared the 2 guys, Cassim and Clay. They guessed all sorts of things. Blade kept chewing food in his mouth, not caring about such trivial matters. Suddenly, there was a tremor that shook the academy. Sophie advised the group to retreat and find shelter. Blade then stood up. At where the king was residing, soldiers were facing a massive dragon. While they were panicking, suddenly Blade ran over, still holding a half-eaten curry plate in his hand. Blade's group was very surprised seeing this. Blade took the lead. Arnett worriedly drew her sword intending to strike the dragon, but was stopped by Sophie. Blade jumped up and used one punch to one-shot knock down the dragon. The curry plate in his hand somehow remained intact. Everyone around was still dazed. Suddenly, Blade affectionately patted the dragon's head. He explained it was still young, so being in a strange environment made it scared. Blade threw the curry plate to the dragon, making it immediately alert from the spiciness. But when he heard people around looking at him with suspicious eyes, Blade tried to explain this was normal. Suddenly, the dragon behind him transformed into a blonde little girl. The little girl immediately jumped up and hugged the young man affectionately. She called Blade father, making him stunned. On top of that, he wondered where the dragon from before went, while Arnett helplessly tried to explain to him. That dragon was the clingy little girl clinging to Blade. Only when Sapphire reminded him did he realize. This foolish young man turned around surprised that the little girl was a dragon. The little girl was also clever. She had only been quiet for a moment before causing chaos at the academy again. That evening at Blade's private bathroom, he was bathing together with the little dragon girl in the same tub. Blade very naturally bathed and scrubbed the little girl. The little dragon wondered about the name Chulane that he had given her. Blade explained it was the name of a passionate warrior who never gave up before difficulties and challenges. Right at that moment, Arnett casually pushed open the bathroom door and walked in looking for Blade. After a moment of embarrassment, she revealed newly found information. Arnett explained that magical beast races including dragons all seek power. When their bodies are defeated, they are destroyed. But their souls don't disappear and remain as information. Then that soul will be reborn into another body. The new body is based on the form of whoever defeated it. In other words, when a dragon is defeated, it will be reborn in humanoid form. But Arnett said this was extremely rare. After she found out Blade was bathing with Chulane, she immediately gave him a slap for being inappropriate, then left immediately. At the cafeteria, Arnett was extremely jealous watching Chulane being fed by Blade. Claire tried to feed the little girl, but Chulane angrily knocked the spoon away. The little girl scolded Claire for being weak and not qualified to feed her. Seeing this, Blade very seriously lectured Chulane. The little girl even set up a bunch of strange rules like having to give good morning kisses. Blade was also not allowed by Chulane to look at other women's bodies. This made the whole friend group unanimously agree to isolate him. At the training ground, Blade sat alone in a corner. Other upper class members saw this and wondered. But Arnett put on a scary face that scared everyone from speaking up. Blade saw Chulane walking nearby and was delighted. He invited the little girl to train together for fun. Chulane saw her father pleading, so she quickly jumped down. Blade's friend group except Arnett also happily came to chat with him. Chulane noticed Blade was happily chatting with friends and disappeared somewhere. In the evening, the little girl was playing with a wooden stick when she met a group of students who wanted to befriend her. But the little girl didn't care and just ran back to her father. That night when Blade put her to sleep, he went out to talk with Arnett. She thought pretending to be Chulane's father forever wasn't a good idea. Although Blade was very worried the little girl would be lonely, Arnett comforted him. She called Sapphire to come out. It turned out both were worried about his situation. When they knew Blade was okay, Sapphire felt relieved and left. When Blade returned to his room, he discovered Chulane was nowhere to be found. It turned out the little girl was on the roof watching the moon. He climbed up and asked what she was doing. Chulane revealed that watching the moon made her feel much more at ease. When Blade wondered if she felt lonely, Chulane revealed that dragons are inherently strong creatures. They usually don't need a pack to survive, so she didn't need friends. She only needed her father by her side. The next morning at the principal's office, Blade was entrusting Chulane's care to the old man. The principal assured him not to worry about that. He was confident he could supervise the little girl properly. But this guy made Blade speechless because he couldn't watch Chulane causing the little girl to run away. He immediately went looking for her everywhere. When Blade returned to the room, he heard Chulane playing with stuffed animals alone. He heard Chulane continuously reciting names at the academy fluently. From everyone's hobbies and names in the group to names very unfamiliar to Blade. They were all students of the academy. Hearing this, Blade felt moved and gently closed the door. He realized he had been too careless with the little one. He even didn't notice Arnett when passing by her. He approached a wall and banged his head against it to release all his troubles, making everyone around run over to check on him. When Arnett learned the cause of the incident, she knew Blade was very worried about Chulane, and now he was feeling helpless about the little girl's situation. Arnett advised him to ask everyone for help. He couldn't keep being sad without a solution. Immediately the next day, Blade and Arnett went to ask the academy students to fight with Chulane. Only that way could make the little girl accept everyone as friends. The two even knelt down very sincerely. Both Sapphire and Blade's friend group also came to kneel to help him. The students were moved and agreed. The whole group equipped themselves fully and went to the arena to fight Chulane. The principal sat in the stands watching with great interest, chatting with the woman beside him. Blade instructed Chulane some things before letting her test everyone's strength. Arnett was the first to charge forward. She took the lead and united everyone. They unanimously declared battle against the little dragon girl Chulane. At the arena, Chulane in dragon form was using her tail to beat the students to a pulp. Arnett was no pushover either. She unleashed fire magic at the dragon, making the little girl dizzy. Immediately Arnett seized the opportunity to rally the crowd to attack in the formation she had trained them in. Kasim and Clay split into two defensive squads on both sides of the dragon. Seeing this, Chulane without hesitation used her tail to sweep in all directions, scattering Clay's group. Kasim's team in charge of defense immediately raised their bows and aimed at the dragon. Right there, another group holding swords commanded by Arnett charged from multiple directions. They exploited blind spots and continuously attacked Chulane. The woman beside the queen remarked on the coordination of the group. Suddenly, the mysterious king wanted to see how the people below would handle this because the dragon's rage had reached maximum level. Chulain immediately used her tail to knock everyone down. The king revealed the scales on the little girl's body would make it impossible for participants to do anything. While the dragon was distracted by the female students, Arnett and Sophie understood the time was ripe. The two girls signaled each other and charged together. One used physical attacks while the other used fire magic to defeat the dragon. The king was still thinking this plan wouldn't harm Chulain when Blade confidently assured him. Under Chulain's feet appeared a sinkhole that had been prepared beforehand, making the dragon immediately lose her footing and fall. It turned out this wasn't actually a cowardly trap set up beforehand. This hole was created only from the start of the match by many students including Leonard. Then a whole group of students holding swords charged up. Despite the dragon Chulain spewing fire randomly all around, Arnett at this point had completely controlled the sword, so she ordered it to create a fire screen against the dragon. Next, Leonard charged up using magic on his weapon. Though he was pushed back, his stamina was still very good thanks to the exercises Arnett made him do daily. After that, before Chulain could stand up, Arnett charged up and one shot made the dragon fall from high up. At this moment, Sophie appeared and used her power to control gravity. She punched a super painful blow to Chulain's stomach. At this moment, Arnett controlled the demon inside her sword. Combined with everyone's united strength, she released a super huge flame that defeated the dragon Chulain. After the dust scattered, the little dragon girl returned to her humanoid form. Chulain tearfully apologized to her father for being defeated. She was afraid Blade would be disappointed in her. But Blade as a father comforted Chulain. He told her that her loss wasn't because Chulain was weak, but because humans are incredibly strong. Finally, Blade also convinced the little girl to acknowledge human strength. Chulain then very shyly asked to befriend everyone. At the Academy's arena center, the principal was supervising workers reconstructing the arena. The mysterious girl beside him wondered about upgrading the arena. He revealed to her he was very happy about the students' growth. He wanted to upgrade this place to improve the training course for the kids. The system he wanted to build was a scientific system. The principal greatly anticipated the day this project would be completed. At the school cafeteria, little Chulain was sitting on Claire's lap being fed by Jessica. At first, the little girl resisted, but seeing Jessica begging so much, she agreed. The little girl's cuteness made her so happy, she practically evaporated. Blade suddenly looked at Arnett and wondered about her change in weight. Everyone around frantically signaled him to shut up. Despite everyone in the group trying to stop him, the clueless Blade still blurted out that Arnett had become noticeably chubby. This embarrassed her, and she cried running away. The whole group was helpless because of the young man's carelessness. After days of being shunned by Arnett, Blade sat down very sadly thinking of ways to reconcile. He misunderstood that being shunned meant not being able to see each other anymore. Everyone around explained that being shunned meant no longer being friends. This made Blade very panicked. He still wanted to be friends with Arnett, so he immediately wanted to find her to apologize. But everyone pointed out Blade didn't even understand what made her angry. If he carelessly said something to anger her again, it would only make things worse. So everyone in the group decided to accompany him to visit Arnett. Claire saw that knocking on the door got no response. She then used a secret technique. Claire used a tool to pick and push the door open. The whole group saw Arnett sitting in a corner inside the room and guessed she was crying. Chulain suddenly smelled delicious food. The little girl charged forward. The whole group turned on the lights and saw a speechless scene in the room. It turned out she wasn't crying, but was just focusing on enjoying delicious food because after the battle with Chulain, she continuously felt very hungry. When Blade learned she wasn't planning to shun him, he casually tried to leave. Suddenly Claire and Jessica held Blade back. They wanted him to advise Arnett to eat less because it wasn't good for her health. Blade then used his previous words to convince Arnett to exercise with everyone to improve her health. At the training ground, Blade and Chulain were actively pushing her to train hard. Both tried pulling her through exercise after exercise. Even during regular meals, they limited the calories she consumed. After a tiring day, Arnett still had to go into the steam room to lose fat. She couldn't take it anymore and jumped out, but was pulled up by the girls to check her weight. She had just climbed onto the scale when it broke under her. Everyone encouraged her to try hard to lose weight through various methods. The next morning at the training ground, Arnett decided to perform a ritual with Blade to exercise hard and lose weight. She asked Blade to stand behind as support while she summoned the divine sword using flames to burn off the excess fat in her body. Blade's friend group ran over and saw Arnett in the flames and were very worried. But Blade reassured them so everyone could only helplessly watch. Arnett at this moment stepped out from the flames. But suddenly her voice became very unusual. The students noticed Arnett was being possessed by Asmodeus. He was excitedly looking for a worthy opponent that his master needed to eliminate. Suddenly Arnett's voice rang out. She demanded the demon burn fat in the literal sense to help her body become slim again like before. This made Asmodeus completely speechless, but this was the master's order, so he had to comply. After a series of operations, suddenly Arnett felt extremely hungry. The hunger made her lose control, and she was about to devour Claire. Blade then drew his sword and slashed multiple times at the demon. After a while, Arnett appeared in a state without a stitch of clothing. Blade held her in his arms to comfort her. That night in Arnett's private room, the friends were speechless because she was eating snacks heartily with Chulain. Yet she still tried to justify that she could use the flame sword to burn fat. This truly made everyone around unable to understand. At the Academy's infirmary, Blade was sitting shirtless for a checkup. The nurse beside him announced his power level had reached 30%. But that didn't mean he could use that power. Rather, if he used 30% of his peak strength, he would collapse, making Blade very panicked. While walking through the Academy hallway, Claire called Blade over to talk. Beside her was a girl named Maria. Maria had a bookworm appearance and was extremely shy, only hiding behind a pillar when meeting Blade. He recognized her as someone from the magic team who had fought the dragon Chulain before. Blade was even insensitive enough to point out all the mistakes Maria made during the fight, nearly making her faint from embarrassment. He remembered everyone's nickname for her was the Clumsy Girl. Today Maria came here with an intention. Somehow she asked him to kill her. At the cafeteria where Blade's whole group gathered, she explained he didn't have to kill her immediately. Maria hoped Blade would log her out when she lost control. Maria sadly revealed her background. She disclosed she was originally from the demon tribe. In her body existed a beast with terrifying power that could escape at any moment. While Maria was about to tell the story, suddenly the cup in her hand shattered. This was because she couldn't control the power inside her. Blade realized this was likely caused by her contact with battle aura through magic veins during the fight with Chulain, making her unable to control the beast's power within. Claire explained Maria was an orphan. If expelled from here for losing control, she would have nowhere to return. Blade and friends all stood up determined to help her. In the arena, Blade established a barrier separating this place from the outside environment. He advised Maria to release all her power, but she firmly refused, fearing she would implicate everyone. Thanks to Arnett's comfort, she removed each piece of armor that was also a seal on her body. Finally, Maria removed the necklace, the strongest seal. Before Arnett could realize the unstable situation, the chain broke and Maria released a terrifying aura. The Demon King inside her body had revealed itself. Arnett immediately released the demon Asmodeus inside her to destroy the Demon King, but was blown far away instantly. Leonard, seeing his goddess being beaten up, also charged, but was knocked away. This time it was Little Dragon Chulain and Sophie's turn to perform. Sophie immediately charged, using her hero power to lock down the Demon King. Chulain also transformed into a dragon and breathed fire at her. But the Demon King caught all the energy and countered Chulain, knocking the little dragon unconscious. Seeing all his companions knocked down, Blade became furious and drew his holy sword. He charged but was flung into the barrier. Blade still tried to use his sword to slash around her, but his attacks were like mosquitoes biting steel, having no effect on her. The Demon King then gathered a super powerful energy ball. She fired directly at Blade, shattering his holy sword. Arnett, despite being battered, somehow still managed to crawl near Blade. She gave him the flame sword she always carried. Blade successfully signed a limited contract with the demon Asmodeus. He was determined to knock her out in one move. The power he released was terrifying, to the point even the demon in the sword was extremely afraid. Blade braced himself and unleashed a super powerful attack aimed at the Demon King. While she was still confident about her invincible shield, suddenly it showed signs of cracking. Blade poured all his strength into the final blow. It was so powerful it destroyed even the barrier. Fortunately, Maria had returned to normal. Blade was glad no one around died. He managed to drag himself a few more steps before collapsing. When Blade woke up in the infirmary, the nurse ran over joyfully and accidentally pressed her 2 huge grapefruits against his face. He didn't even understand what was happening. The nurse hugged him, crying because she thought a moment's delay could have meant Blade wouldn't be saved in time. After stabilizing, he asked about Maria and his friends. Knowing they were being cared for by Claire's group and were fine, he finally felt relieved. The next morning at the academy, the Demon King in Maria's form was confidently greeting everyone. She revealed to Blade that Maria was just another personality of hers, then walked past him. At the principal's office, Blade's whole group was there. He revealed he had known Maria's secret for a long time. The girl was pitiful as her mother died at birth and her father's whereabouts were unknown. The principal said Maria's father was the Demon King and she was his daughter. At the schoolyard, Maria was happily chatting with female students. She appeared very obedient, following all arrangements from everyone and the school. Maria even exposed her panties, making Kasim and Clay have nosebleeds and faint. Blade noticed everyone called her by the nickname Mao. When Mao left with the female friend group, She left a challenge for Blade in the near future. Blade's friend group was very worried they wouldn't see Maria again since Mao and she were two separate personalities. That evening in Blade's room while he was putting Chulane to sleep, Mao appeared outside the window clearly showing her bat wings flying around. She invited Blade on a midnight date, surprising him greatly. Before Blade could agree, she had already pulled him out flying. Mao dropped Blade on a nearby rooftop. She revealed because she had deep obsession with heroes, she stayed at this boring academy. Mao revealed she wanted to kill him before leaving the academy. Those half-serious, half-joking words made Blade laugh. Mao expressed she seemed to be attracted to him and offered to be his life partner. Blade didn't understand romantic matters much. He only focused on being able to train together with her in the future. When Mao heard Blade ask about Maria, she revealed Maria was being engulfed by darkness in her heart. Because of her special identity, she was often chased away and despised by humans. Maria had a psychological trauma about her father. She always wondered why her father abandoned her and her mother. That's why Maria didn't want to come out now. The next morning at the academy, Eliza, who was Maria's friend, was discussing with Blade's group about the power sealing necklace. He explained that the necklace Mao was wearing around her neck was probably some kind of storage device for something. Mao revealed in Maria's memory this was a keepsake from her mother. When Mao learned she would be eliminated, she was very calm. Eliza wanted to see the necklace, so she agreed. Eliza used magic to examine the necklace. Then he asked Mao to remove it. As soon as it was removed, the chain projected an image of the Demon King. He called the name Amelia. It turned out that was Maria's mother's name. The Demon King wasn't evil and heartless as she imagined. He was just facing dangerous enemies. He didn't want Maria and her mother to be implicated. The Demon King had even thought of a name for the little life in Amelia's belly. His love awakened Maria. Even Mao persuaded her to come out. As soon as the group called Maria's name from her trance, she had completely regained control of her body. She collapsed crying like a child under the comfort of her friends around. In the end, Mao's personality wasn't eliminated. She still got to have a proper fight with Blade at the arena under everyone's cheers. On the street, Blade was talking about delicious pudding. This made little Chulane jump up with joy. The whole group strolled through the market. The little dragon was eager to taste the food here. Arnett suddenly saw something blocking the road ahead. It was a horse carriage loaded with luggage on top. It turned out this carriage was pulled by a centaur girl. Blade immediately recognized her as Dione, surprising her. Dione recognized him and was about to shout his hero identity when he covered her mouth to stop her. When the group asked if Blade knew the girl, he stammered and changed the subject to the carriage full of stuff beside them. Little Dragon Chulane immediately volunteered to help carry things. While the group was chatting happily, the principal appeared from somewhere, making Blade's face drop gloomily. It turned out the huge pile of stuff was the principal's luggage. Dione was in charge of transporting his luggage. The old principal, who knows what he was thinking, suddenly appointed Doni as an instructor at Rosewood Academy. This surprised everyone around, but the principal had great trust in the centaur's talent. At the academy, students were very curious about Doni. She stood before dozens of holy iron blocks. She took a deep breath. Immediately Doni charged forward. With one smooth strike, she pierced through the iron block with her sharp spear. The dozens of holy iron blocks before Doni all melted simultaneously. Sophi realized holy iron couldn't be destroyed. But thanks to her extraordinary striking speed, Doni had melted all the iron. Next she gathered strength and charged in a zigzag pattern, turning the iron before her into donuts. After finishing destroying all the iron, Doni turned back confidently. She mentioned she had just warmed up. Now the main lesson for students would begin. When she heard Blade remind her about introducing herself, Doni revealed she was a demon merchant. She was even passionate enough to declare war on the students around. Arnett immediately remembered Doni's identity. She exclaimed excitedly because the centaur before her was a brave general who led the strongest cavalry legion. This made the students around very happy. They asked Doni about all sorts of things. Arnett didn't understand why someone great like Doni knew Blade, making him nervously try to whistle to distract everyone's attention. At the bathroom where he was scrubbing Chulane, the centaur Doni beside him was extremely relaxed, being scrubbed by the two beauties Jessica and Claire, making her feel wonderful. The girls took this opportunity to try to get her to reveal information about Blade. At first she hesitated to keep the secret, but later under such attentive care, Doni was so pleased she made strange sounds, startling Blade, who was bathing Chulane. He didn't hesitate to immediately run to the girls' bathroom. Except for Arnett, everyone had no objection to him being there. Jessica even casually showed off her body in front of Blade. Truly a lucky young man. Suddenly Doni fell into reminiscence and accidentally revealed that she first met him when he was 5 years old. Before Blade could stop her, Maria covered his mouth. The whole group chilled in the bathtub listening to Doni tell about when she first met him. Blade looked like a beast because of his fierce appearance. The boy at that time could barely speak. Blade mistook Doni for a normal horse, so he charged up and bit her butt. That memory made Blade hide underwater in embarrassment. A few years later, when she had trained to the level of fighting alongside the hero, this made all the girls admire her for having fought alongside the hero. But the centaur said since she couldn't accompany that person to fight the Demon King, she had always blamed herself and trained frantically thinking she wasn't strong enough. Blade beside her was still hiding for fear everyone would realize he was that hero. But except for Mao and Safai, no one knew anything about that identity of his. The next morning, while Blade and Arnett were walking together choosing souvenirs for Doni, suddenly a Simurgh appeared above them. According to Arnett, it was one of the 4 birds of this continent. While both were discussing that it didn't have a habit of attacking humans, suddenly the Simurgh glared. It dove down and grabbed a carriage. Arnett immediately drew her sword without hesitation. The Simurgh's eyes changed sharply, looking toward her. Fortunately, Blade beside her blocked in time, or she would have been in trouble. Somehow another Simurgh appeared in the sky. They seemed to be a pair. They only attacked carriages. Blade guessed it was probably because the respectable principal knew something. At the principal's office, Arnett had dropped all formalities. She went straight in, slamming the table to question him. They believed this was related to the principal. Also because of the Simurgh attacking carriages, and just days ago Doni had used a carriage to deliver his luggage. Upon asking, everyone was shocked to learn inside was a Simurgh egg. No wonder its mother was so angry searching for it. It turned out the principal did this for a reason. He mentioned hatching a Simurgh egg required 2 conditions. First was placing the egg on a divine tree as tall as a tree over 10,000 years old. Second was the egg needed to be bathed in sunset light when hatching. It turned out the mother bird placed the nest in a terrible position, so he decided to bring the egg back under the guise of training students. They needed to help the egg hatch successfully. Its estimated hatching time was tomorrow. The next day at the Academy Center, Blade and Arnett gathered all students together. They assigned the mission to distract the parent Simurghs, then wait for sunset to hang the egg in the most prominent position to help it safely hatch. Then the plan immediately began. The Simurgh was furiously destroying the town. Leonard, seeing this, took the lead, charging forward with Jessica. He held his spear and charged to directly face the monster bird, but missed his footing. The girl above was almost caught by the Simurgh, but fortunately Clay charged up to block an attack. While the Simurgh was distracted, the students used rope guns to fix the monster bird in place, but somehow it still dragged the entire building up and flew away. While delaying the monster's attack, everyone tried their best to treat each other's wounds. Suddenly, a Simurgh charged in. Fortunately, Chulain breathed fire. The Demon King also joined the battle, with the demon Asmodeus possessing Arnett's body. They united to attack and restrain the monster. At dusk, when seeing the Simurgh approaching the egg, Blade's teammates didn't let him handle it alone, but united to charge together. He immediately released his terrifying power and climbed the tower wall with Doni. Upon reaching the top, Blade and Doni immediately lifted the egg to a higher position, preventing the monster bird from approaching it. The principal, who appeared from somewhere, was standing beside, praising them genuinely. Suddenly, a Simurgh approached. The principal stood on the city wall railing, expressing gratitude. It turned out he was once saved by a Simurgh, so he owed it a debt. He was determined to help the monster bird hatch its egg successfully to repay that debt. But the Simurgh was even angrier and knocked the principal away. Fortunately, Safai's power restrained the monster. Blade then used all his strength to knock the Simurgh unconscious. At sunset, the egg successfully hatched into a cute pair of twins. After that, Blade and Arnett were allowed to ride the baby birds flying as thanks. Everyone was very happy about this. At this moment, Blade was carrying a sword stained with fresh blood. He had just battled many upper-class students and Blade had won. Safai found Blade walking in the hallway and ran over. She challenged him to a fight. Safai charged, using her artificial hero power to freeze time. But how could a fake compare to the real thing? Although Safai attacked him with full force for 10 seconds, Blade calmly stood there. Suddenly, he charged and pinned Safai against the wall. He revealed she couldn't damage him because during those 10 seconds Blade had used his power to strengthen his body's hardness. Right after that, Blade used his sword to pierce deep into Safai's stomach, making her collapse immediately. It turned out this was a virtual space created by the principal for his grandson. This was a magic system that had fallen into oblivion called science. The technique he was using was simulation. The remaining members of Blade's group were also using this device to fight in virtual 3-dimensional space. Blade was quite worried because his old man made this technique too realistic. This made him fear that when going out to the real world, Blade wouldn't be able to distinguish virtual from real. Understanding his grandson's worry, the principal immediately adjusted the system, bringing Blade into a cartoon space with pink as the main color, surrounded by candy houses, so Blade could immediately tell what was real and what was virtual. The girl Crazy Leonard saw Arnett and ran over to fight her to show off. Before he could even be cool for 3 seconds, she turned him into a Kit Kat, making him collapse to the ground while Arnett was now losing control. Her face showed a super sinister smile as she stabbed down, sending him back to the real world. After that, Arnett licked the sword with satisfaction. She continued leisurely walking to find Blade to battle. While Blade was walking, he met the group of Cassim Clay and the two girls Jessica Claire. Clay immediately blocked an unexpected attack from Jessica, pushing her back. Claire was about to fly out to help her friend when she was scared out of her wits by a knife throw from Cassim. The two guys bragged the girls had never beaten them in real combat, but Claire said that was before, and now victory would go to whoever was stronger at the present moment. While Cassim and Clay were distracted, the nimble Jessica immediately charged up like lightning. They eliminated Cassim from the game. Clay didn't even understand what happened before being logged out by one of Claire's sword strikes. The two girls celebrated their victory happily. Suddenly, Arnett appeared from behind, calling Blade's name nearby. Only then did the girls realize he had been watching their fight all along. Arnett was very excited to slash Blade to death. Seeing her go crazy, he reminded her of the promise that Blade would eliminate Arnett if she lost control of herself. He immediately used his sword to slash the ground several times, creating a dust screen. It blocked Arnett's vision but didn't stop her determination to slash people. She immediately charged up with her tongue sticking out like wild animals starved for a long time. Blade then used an endless sword technique to continuously create shock waves aimed at Arnett. Suddenly Blade woke up from the simulation. He saw everyone around staring at him intently. The young man immediately sat up nonchalantly. The principal, seeing this, happily announced Blade was the last one standing. Arnett was sitting depressed beside him because she didn't expect in the virtual world setting she would look like escaped mental patients. While the principal sat on a golden throne rambling about youth, Arnett below glared fiercely at him. She blamed him for this idea of torturing everyone. Yet the principal still burst out laughing happily. Suddenly Blade went up to adjust the machine. It turned out this was the winner's privilege. The old man looked and saw his grandson adjusting a bunch of monsters along with super many trap settings, and his face froze. The principal hadn't even had time to question whether it was too harsh for students when suddenly Blade plugged the virtual world connection hat onto his head, making him collapse to the floor, logging into the virtual setting. Blade decided to punish the old man there until evening. At the academy cafeteria, Blade was as always enjoying his curry deliciously, while the two guys Cassim and Clay sat sadly at another table. They were humiliated for not being skilled enough to solo two girls. Arnett learned the reason for the male team's loss from Blade. He said straight out it was because those two were too confident, so they neglected training and led to such terrible results. Blade's whole group went to the principal's new construction site. The Centaur Doni was in charge of building there. Blade wondered what Thermi was. Suddenly Eliza appeared from somewhere explaining to everyone about this place. It turned out this was a large hot spring for everyone. Suddenly Blade noticed Maria was standing awkwardly nearby in a swimsuit. He wondered what she was shy about. Then Jessica boldly showed off her charm without many words. The guys nearby saw this and embarrassedly turned away. Claire noticed the two guys Cassim and Clay were still dazed in a corner. Blade wondered where Arnett was. It turned out she was wrapped in a pure white towel, acting shy in various ways. The perverted principal appeared from somewhere completely naked, showing his whole package, making Arnett embarrassed. The principal thought Arnett wrapping a towel was inappropriate for hot spring bathing, so he ordered everyone forbidden from wrapping towels when soaking. The girls and boys around were also eager. They wanted to admire Arnett's body without the towel. The principal was so over the top he got hit immediately by the girl standing beside him. Arnett was embarrassed, but because her friends were so enthusiastic, she still had to remove the towel. Jessica and Claire went to where Cassim and Clay were sad. They comforted the two guys with words like salt in their wounds, making them even more hurt and run away, leaving the friend group helplessly sighing witnessing that scene. That night Blade was sitting eating popcorn comforting Clay and Cassim. Clay expressed he didn't want to lose to Jessica because he liked her, while Cassim simped for Claire's cute shy manner tremendously. Suddenly Chulane came crashing through the window. The little girl brainwashed the two guys that girls only like strong people, so she introduced them to Blade's training course. At the girls' room while they were enjoying snacks, Jessica and Claire asked Arnett's opinion about Cassim and Clay. Suddenly Chulane barged in again. The little girl said exactly the same words as earlier in the boys' room. The girls also vaguely realized the two guys might have feelings for Jessica and Claire. Arnett then had a plan for this awkward situation. On the other side, Cassim and Clay were going through Blade's training course very diligently. The day they returned to the arena to have a decisive battle with Jessica and Claire, the guys wanted to win to take the opportunity to confess to the girls. At the virtual arena under everyone's cheers, Jessica charged to fight Cassim while Clay fought Claire. The two guys dominated the girls in close combat. Cassim used wind spirit power to hold Jessica back so Clay could charge up, but he was immediately pushed back by her fire power. Claire used battle aura to immediately eliminate Cassim, while Clay was beaten to a pulp by Jessica's elemental power and was also out of the arena. After that, both guys shook hands and admitted defeat. Arnett, seeing their low confidence, scolded them again. She blamed them for not being able to think more openly. Girls don't need to like someone stronger. Arnett was so helpless. The group of Arnett, Jessica, Claire, Sophie, and Maria was standing before a robot on the pedestrian street. Suddenly, that robot projected a two-dimensional image of Blade. At the same time, the young man was sitting at the school training ground. Blade sat training his battle aura. Around him radiated a brilliant golden aura. Right at that moment, little Chulain came charging from outside. She rushed straight to where her father sat and was blown away by the overwhelming energy. Right then, the group of girls brought the robot from the street before Blade. Seeing this, his expression changed dramatically. Blade swung a super powerful sword strike, chopping the poor robot into hundreds of pieces, to Claire's astonishment standing beside. Arnett then rushed to Blade, scolding him for the surprise attack. At that time, the robot wasn't completely broken yet. It was still observing Arnett. Blade explained this robot was extremely dangerous because it was a guardian. After a while, the whole group observed the robot had transformed into the shape of a beautiful girl. Blade wondered what it came here for. Suddenly, the robot went crazy and tried to attack the group. Seeing this, he panicked and fled. Blade continuously attacked it, firing so many shock waves that holes appeared in the arena wall. The robot was completely buried under the rubble. Arnett felt sympathy for the robot and ran over to scold Blade. She thought he was too harsh on a girl. But Blade knew well she would recover by herself. Indeed, by evening the robot was sitting intact at the ruined wall. She was astonishingly calm. While Blade was still impatiently about to attack again, the robot suddenly stood up. She frankly stated she was assigned the mission to assassinate Blade. Claire was not scared, but even approached her. The robot reminded her she was not a target for elimination. But if Claire dared to block her way, she wouldn't mind wiping her out. Claire didn't care about that threat. She only focused on the code on the robot's chest. It turned out it wasn't the word Lona, but 10 now, being both her identification number and form number. But Claire was astonishingly optimistic. She still called the robot's name Lona. When learning about her mission to destroy Blade, Claire excitedly tried to get her to cooperate in eliminating Blade, leaving him beside her speechless. At a classroom in the school, when Elise asked the reason she wanted to eliminate Blade, the robot said he attacked important places on her body, making her feel extremely humiliated. The girls, hearing this, all directed contemptuous looks at Blade. It turned out the important place Blade infiltrated was the Royal Library underground to research ways to help Arnett last time. When hearing about Blade's destruction to Lona, all the girls scolded him, making Blade angrily walk away. Sophie followed to talk with Blade about the robot. While at the classroom, Elise was analyzing why Lona failed to eliminate Blade. Arnett and Jessica, after hearing Lona, wanted Blade to go easy on her. Both girls melted at Lona's innocence. Elise above already had a suitable solution for her, which was directly implanting a soul into the robot's heart core. This would make Lona no longer immortal. They wanted to test if this method could make Blade soften and show mercy. At the arena in the academy, a battle was happening between Blade and Lona. They stood on the arena floor with enthusiastic cheers from surrounding students. Lona warned Blade beforehand that she had completely disconnected from the server. This meant she couldn't resurrect. Lona, without any embarrassment, grabbed the lucky young man Blade's hand and shoved it between her two magnificent peaks. She reminded him her soul was in her heart core. If it was destroyed, Lona would be lost forever. This shocked Blade greatly. Before he could understand anything, the robot girl had already initiated her attack. Lona unleashed a combo kick, beating Blade senseless, then threw him into the wall, making Blade extremely dizzy. Seeing she intended to continue attacking, Blade really wanted to directly eliminate Lona. But thinking she was no longer immortal, he reluctantly used wind pressure but couldn't do anything to the robot. Lona smiled cunningly and immediately used her flexible mechanical arm to wrap around behind Blade. She struck him with a palm, sending him flying, then charged up, punching and kicking him wildly. After he managed to stand up, he didn't say the reason for losing was because he let her win. Instead, Blade gallantly admitted her moves were powerful and conceded defeat, making Lona very happy. At the school cafeteria, while Blade's friends were preparing to eat, Arnett noticed Lona didn't seem to want to eat much. The robot revealed she couldn't decompose organic matter like food, but Elise immediately realized this was exhaustion syndrome. This made Lona always listless after defeating her target Blade. They were all surprised because this was a manifestation only humans have. The robot at this moment didn't know who to ask for help. Claire reminded her she could ask people around. Lona said whenever she encountered problems she couldn't solve, she would ask for guidance from the mother server. But now that she had restored connection, the mother server still refused Lona's connection. She guessed it was probably because she had cancelled the mission midway and disconnected on her own. So the mother server had deleted her device registration. Lona was very troubled by this. She then turned her sparkling eyes toward Blade. Lona wanted him to be her master. She explained if he didn't replace the server, the self-destruct countdown inside her would continue running. This made everyone around Lona very panicked, so Blade reluctantly set himself up as her new master. Outside the school grounds, he was sitting playing with little Chulane when Lona wearing an apron came over bringing a plate of delicious food for the two. The little dragon seeing this immediately brightened up and gobbled the whole plate. Blade wondered why she was wearing that maid outfit. Lona explained this was servant clothing when serving the master. Blade felt uncomfortable because she was monitoring his freedom. Suddenly Sapphire appeared with a jealous expression beside them. She argued with Lona about trivial matters. The two argued about whose master Blade was. The next day Lona and Sapphire appeared with animal ears to compete for Blade's attention. The two girls even fought each other one-on-one but got bonked on the head by Blade. But the most perverted thing was the two competing to watch Blade sleep. While he was deep asleep, the two girls talked and expressed themselves. It turned out Lona and Sapphire had something in common. Both girls at their loneliest moments were saved by Blade, so he had become someone extremely important to both. So the next day everyone was surprised by how close the two girls had become. Blade suddenly asked about the countdown with a very serious expression. When everyone checked, it turned out it was still continuously counting down to self-destruction. Eliza stood up analyzing it seemed even the most powerful beings couldn't replace the server to become Lona's master. At that moment Blade suddenly asked about her wish. Lona only wished to be with everyone in her final moments. She also wouldn't affect everyone. After that Blade's group organized a party inviting her to participate. At that party many memories were made, making Lona very happy. After a while, suddenly Jessica and Claire worriedly reported the robot's disappearance. When Lona's countdown was about to end was also when everyone found her. But Lona erected a barrier separating everyone outside. She didn't want to implicate them. At the same time, she also sent thanks to Sapphire because she had helped an emotionless machine like Lona experience living like a real human for the first time. Sapphire and everyone shed tears of sadness before a life about to disappear. Lona in her life and death moments was scared for the first time. She was afraid of disappearing, but when the countdown reached 0, she was completely fine. Suddenly Blade appeared. It turned out he had convinced the mother server to stop the self-destruct program on Lona. This made her immediately fulfill her wish. Lona hugged Blade tightly making him unable to breathe. Her expression was extremely satisfied. At Rosewood Magic Academy, a sparring session between students was taking place. Originally this session was for students to compete with each other, but something seemed off when Blade had already defeated all students in the academy. Fortunately Leonard was still standing. He immediately confidently cast magic on his spear. After hearing lots of cheers from the girls, his goddess Arnett immediately poured cold water on his head. She mocked that Blade spared Leonard because he didn't want to fight him. Hearing this, Leonard's blood boiled. He grabbed the enchanted spear and immediately charged toward Blade. Looking cool like that, but somehow the other guy still won. The other students weren't surprised either and left. Only Blade stayed behind. He invited Leonard to go eat. On another side, Maria's face was very worried. That evening while Maria was bathing, Mao appeared to tease her. On another side, Leonard after the fight with Blade started overthinking. He thought there's always a higher mountain. Blade beat Leonard because he was strong, but he still wanted to defeat Blade to get Arnett's attention, so he decided to upgrade his weapon. At the school grounds, Leonard was sitting on a stone bench when suddenly Maria appeared. She saw through the unwillingness in his always smiling face. Maria understood well the feeling of being defeated, and she herself felt inferior about it too. She always wanted to become stronger to stand alongside Blade, not to stand behind him enjoying his protection. Leonard, after guessing for a while, finally realized she was trying to encourage him. Maria expressed she was sad seeing Leonard truly underestimate himself. He was losing the will to defeat Blade because he always failed. So the young man suddenly realized the truth. He was determined to defeat Blade no matter what because Leonard thought his crush Arnett would notice him when he won. Suddenly Eliza appeared from somewhere. This kid realized the two of them absolutely couldn't beat Blade if they just kept encouraging each other's spirits without increasing their physical strength. In Eliza's eyes, Blade was a true monster with terrifying power. He decided to help the two become stronger so they could defeat him. Leonard and Maria happily agreed. Then they wondered who this guy was, making Eliza speechlessly introduce himself again. Leonard then opened a secret meeting of people who wanted to defeat Blade, including the two guys Cassim Clay, the girls Arnett Lona Maria, the two girls Jessica and Claire, and little dragon Chulane also participated. Jessica and Claire suggested straight-up poisoning, but Arnett found that too cowardly. Arnett then declared she wanted to treat Blade as a monster. She would use a bunch of weapons to fight him to determine the winner. But that was also as cowardly as poisoning and sneak attacking. So the whole group had to think of a better way. Leonard then reminded everyone about challenging Blade in their own style. and from there the plan to defeat Blade was enthusiastically executed by the whole group. The next day at the Academy Arena, Arnett was the first to fight Blade. She held the enchanted spear of the unlucky Leonard to battle. The result was Arnett had just charged in when Blade's weapon shattered the spear. The spear's owner, seeing it like that, also cried. Jessica, seeing this, tried a sneak attack. She infiltrated Blade's room while he was sleeping, intending to punch him. Suddenly Lona, whether intentionally or accidentally, activated the protection mechanism. So Jessica, in a burnt state, failed miserably. Next was Leonard entering with his newly repaired weapon. He was full of spirit, intending to eliminate Blade, but when he had just activated it, the spear self-destructed, making its owner regret deeply. Maria was determined to avenge everyone. She took advantage of Blade's opening to let Mao take over her body. The Demon King happily intended to charge in to eliminate him, but got one shot in the face by Blade's long unwashed shoes, knocking her unconscious. Safai, witnessing everyone's failure, also didn't intend to give up. She went up to fight Blade. Before she could even unleash her move, the guy slammed his hand straight down on her face, making her bleed from the nose and stopping the game right there. Claire, Kasim, and Clay weren't much better either when they all used their own methods, but still couldn't defeat Blade. Chulane had to step in. 1 second before the little girl was about to bite her father's head. The next second she had to obediently submit and eat the curry Blade gave her. Next were all kinds of methods, from physical attacks to playing by rules, but none were feasible. This made the seminar on eliminating Blade, held for the 11th time, now still without a solution for making him fail. Leonard wondered what the group's original intention was. Arnett bristled with determination, wanting to beat Blade to death. Leonard started spouting philosophy, making her sick. Suddenly Arnett mentioned making him surrender, meaning making Blade voluntarily surrender like his previous fight with Lona. But when hearing about the whole group playing dirty, using Lona's life as a shield, suddenly the young man felt this was somewhat cowardly. Yet Arnett didn't care about those moral standards. She only cared about whether she could beat Blade or not. Leonard, being shaken back and forth by her, also dizzily agreed. At the Academy's disciplinary committee, the teacher was lecturing above. Blade wondered where the boys went, leaving only girls here. They frantically crowded together, explaining and covering up in various ways so as not to reveal the plan. Suddenly, some masked guys whom we all knew too well who they were came to threaten the teacher, to her confusion. The boys begged the teacher to cooperate, and she understood. The students all went outside while Blade was kept behind to save the teacher. But the girls, seeing the teacher about to be saved by Blade, suddenly got jealous. They crowded up to prove they were more worthy of being hostages. These girls were only good at chasing boys. After a while, all the girls were taken hostage, making the scene awkward. Yet Blade was still so clueless, he didn't even know what hostages and terrorists were. Little Chulane had to lecture her father. The rest were helpless before this guy's negative ick. Suddenly Blade went over and revealed the identities of the kidnappers as Kasim, Clay, and Leonard. He didn't understand what kind of ridiculous act they were putting on. Kasim still tried to act villainous by groping Arnett and Claire's chests. The result was getting beaten by the two to cure his opportunistic behavior. Leonard again tried to convince Blade to surrender but failed, so he had to cooperate with Arnett. Leonard pretended to put a sword to her throat, making her a hostage. While the group was still trying to convince Blade to surrender, he had already executed an armor-breaking attack, creating an eye-burning scene as the boys' clothes were torn apart. So the whole group determined to transform into battle forms, charging up, intending to send Blade to the afterlife. But the result wasn't too surprising, as he was still the winner. But the competitive Arnett absolutely refused to give up. So the draft session on eliminating Blade took place again. Leonard, although looking terrible already, still tried because of his goddess Arnett's will. He encouraged everyone to try again no matter what. Yet Arnett only cared about wanting to be acknowledged by Blade, making the guy standing beside painfully about to cry from being ignored. While Blade and Arnett were at the cafeteria getting food, Blade noticed a group of friends celebrating a girl's birthday. Through Arnett's explanation, Blade learned this was a birthday, but he didn't even understand what a birthday was. This surprised Arnett quite a bit. She invited the girls and her friend group along with the centaur Doni to go camping and have tea. Here Arnett asked Doni about Blade's birthday, but even the centaur didn't know, because when she picked him up, the boy could already stand and walk. She estimated he was about 1 year old back then. Blade was probably around 17 now. Doni also revealed his name was Blade because when she picked him up, he was holding a sword in his hand. Arnett then wondered what he liked. The girls around mentioned the curry cutlet he always ate, but Arnett found this dish too ordinary. Suddenly, the principal appeared from somewhere. He was very excited about the girls' gift idea. He completely agreed with giving Blade that dish. But Arnett was quite hesitant because she thought this dish already appeared in the school cafeteria. Suddenly, the principal mentioned trying to make a special royal curry cutlet. So the whole group got to work together. He went big to the point of gathering all students in one place. Then the principal opened the National Food Warehouse gate. He wanted all students to go in and fight to get their favorite food. Blade was still wondering what this old man was planning when suddenly he announced they needed to complete the given condition to get out. The extremely tricky condition was to consume 11.3 billion calories, meaning each person would have to consume at least 100 million calories. Don't understand how they could eat that much. The principal warned beforehand that each dish in here was guarded by ancient gods. Blade was still worrying and mentioning this mission was only for hero level when suddenly his friends volunteered to go in excitedly, making Blade not understand anything and showing a dumbfounded face. The whole group set up camp in the forest. At this moment Jessica was swinging on a rope luring a giant rhinoceros. She directed it to run toward the trap the group had set up. But suddenly the beast ran for a while, then noticed and charged toward Claire nearby. Leonard intended to perform a hero-saving beauty moment. But the guy wasn't cool for 3 seconds before being knocked away by the animal's tail. Maria, seeing this, summoned the Mao personality in her body. Right at that moment Blade ran over very worried. Mao noticed him and quickly dealt with the monster before Blade could make a move. That evening the group carried the newly hunted beast back. Blade noticed everyone had their own tasks, like little Chulane craving meat, Sophie and Maria in charge of sewing clothes, Lona nearby with a sinister smile stroking weapons, while Arnett was commanding the girls to work. That evening while Blade was sitting chilling soaking in the spring, Arnett, shyly wrapped in a towel, came over. She told him not to look and Blade naively did so. She was speechless. Arnett looked at the scar on his chest and couldn't help wondering. Blade talked about how he always had to train daily against strong enemies because according to him only when fighting stronger opponents could he become stronger. Arnett didn't understand why Blade would risk his life like that. He said this was related to his childhood. Arnett suddenly felt sorry for Blade, so she reached out to touch the scar on his chest. This scene was seen by Jessica and Claire hiding in the bushes. So Claire rushed out to hug Arnett before she could do anything. This made her extremely embarrassed, realizing she had been watched all along. The next morning the students were all very excited. They had probably adapted to life in this forest. Lona reported they had consumed nearly half of the total calorie condition to get out. The principal was very satisfied with this result, but he still didn't think it was enough for students, so he released a mission to find ingredients on paper. Blade still didn't understand what was different about these ingredients when Arnett and others quickly understood and got to work. In a cave, Blade's group ambushed a mutant cabbage. Arnett quickly as lightning struck and cut off its tentacles that were charging toward them. Sophie reminded her to keep it alive. Blade still didn't understand what was happening when he was knocked down by the eager guys charging forward. The friend group quickly captured the monster cabbage alive. After that, the whole group went to a cornfield, the place containing boxing corn, which was an ingredient to be collected. Blade still didn't understand how to collect it when Sophie pulled out an ingredient book. She explained to get the corn at its freshest, they needed to box with it in the traditional way. Blade was dumbfounded. Before he could orient himself, the group had already put boxing gloves on him. He was pushed out to fight it. Before Blade could attack, he took a punch to the face, so he switched to serious mode. The two fought without missing a beat. Victory naturally belonged to Blade. After that, Blade's group collected monster tomatoes and super spicy chili. The chili was so intense it made even Lona, a robot, shed tears while collecting. Chulane smelled the sweet scent of an ingredient and ran toward where the fragrance appeared. It turned out to be a giant sunflower ingredient. Before Maria could even read the guidebook, the sunflowers had gathered sunlight and fired a super high energy beam toward the group. Maria, not giving up, used the Mao personality along with Chulane in dragon form to collect the flowers. On another side, Blade's group was struggling to collect giant carrots. Its scream could kill surrounding creatures. Fortunately, Lona was a robot, so she wasn't affected by the curse. She successfully collected the giant carrot despite the surrounding area being devastated by its scream. At the palace, the principal was very happy with the students' achievements, but he also hinted that tomorrow's final ingredient was extremely difficult to collect. Nevertheless, Arnett and her friends below were determined to complete the mission. The next day, the whole group observed a 1,000-meter-tall ancient tree. It turned out this was the territory of a giant humanoid bison. Blade was still on guard when the bison was about to charge toward the friend group. Suddenly, in an instant, it was completely eliminated. Only the leg remained standing while the upper body disappeared. It turned out to be a giant behemoth. Because it had defeated the king of this forest, it was now naturally the final boss. Blade was still scared out of his wits when suddenly Arnett took the lead, transforming into a fire demon. She rallied the student group to charge together. This made Blade excitedly join the fight too. The whole friend group coordinated perfectly, attacking multiple points on the monster. Just when it seemed eliminated, the behemoth charged out from the dust. Fortunately, Leonard timely created a shield protecting the group from the fatal attack. Blade then intended to use his final move. He needed to release more than 30% of his power, so Blade had to hold Mao's hand, asking her to control the spirit power in his body. She took that opportunity to kiss Blade, making Arnett very irritated. Lona above had set up a gun charging energy preparing to fire. Sophi controlled gravity. Together they coordinated firing energy at the monster. But this only made it more furious. So the remaining student group charged up to hold down the behemoth, giving Blade and Mao the opportunity to strike. The two used a beautiful sword slash, cutting the beast in two halves. Blade after the battle was extremely hungry and tired. At the infirmary while Blade was having a checkup, the nurse reminded him about lunch, making the starving Blade immediately run to the cafeteria. When he entered, everyone welcomed Blade with a birthday party for him. Everyone pushed him to the table. When they uncovered the dish, Blade was even more surprised to see it was royal curry cutlet. He was moved but held back tears. The principal then encouraged Blade with heroic words. At that moment he no longer held back. Tears just flowed down. Blade ate the delicious curry plate while everyone watched. He was extremely grateful to them. At the arena, Clay was performing an armor-breaking slash. He was very happy because he had managed to damage the armor. Suddenly Sophi appeared nearby. The two guys showing off to the girl approached her. Kasim and Clay saw her contemplating the armor. Clay got excited wanting to show her the move he just did. But Sophi didn't care and drew her sword. Around her gathered a super powerful aura. She slashed the armor into many pieces before everyone's eyes. Blade explained this girl was the master of that technique. So Clay's slashing technique was like a mosquito biting steel to her. Suddenly from afar flew someone who looked exactly like Sophi. She aimed at Blade. Before he could defend, Sophi had already charged up wanting to protect Blade. The person just now was blown away by Sophi to everyone's confusion. Sophi's original ran to an abandoned house and entered. Inside were other versions of Sophi also there. The Sophi who just came back was named Un. Another version sitting depressed in a dark corner continuously mocked her for failing the mission. Seeing this, Un was very upset. She told a childish Sophi version named Sink to eliminate Toi, the version in the dark corner. A gentle Sophi behind Un asked her about collected information. Before Un could answer, the gentle version had already kissed her lips. This was their special way of transmitting information. Then Un went to another version to kiss and transmit information. Sink and Toi, who were chasing each other behind, also had to stop for the gentle Sophi to transmit information through lip contact. The whole group of clones after being synchronized learned Sophi's drag smash technique. So the whole group aimed at Un, then unleashed the move, causing their only shelter to explode into 1,000 pieces. Sophi at this time was on top of the academy roof contemplating the distance. At the arena, Jessica was wielding a golden gun, unleashing an extremely powerful move, destroying the armor in an instant. It turned out this was Elias's invention. It would accumulate energy and release super powerful shock waves, helping knock out opponents in just a few beats. Suddenly a version of Sophi appeared at the arena. This version carried a death scythe. She was very lustful, and as soon as she opened her mouth demanded Blade mate with her, making everyone around blush with embarrassment when hearing. The version seeing Blade had no intention of complying immediately attacked him. The result was still being completely dominated by him. Suddenly, the Sophi version played dirty, grabbing Blade's hand and controlling him to squeeze her two peaks. The real Sophi at this moment appeared seeing Blade's hand in the wrong place. She became extremely jealous wanting to fight that version. But somehow that one ran away. Arnett estimated the number of versions based on weapons. Currently, there were 4 versions existing. On another side at the cafeteria, everyone was discussing the learning enthusiasm of the newly appeared Sophis. Arnett guessed they might be Sophi's sisters. But seeing everyone around didn't quite agree, she switched to serious mode. She asked everyone about the abnormalities of this incident. A black-haired girl raised her hand wanting to speak. She felt these clones seemed genuinely serious about eliminating Blade, but this was completely normal for his friend group. Everyone had even had intentions of defeating and eliminating Blade. This scared the black-haired girl. She and her surrounding friends expressed that the clones had very different intentions from Blade's friend group. Not just the normal type of defeat. Only then did Arnett's brain work out that Blade was being assassinated. Sophi walking nearby helplessly tripped and fell flat on her face. She wondered what these people ate to be so stupid. Only now did they realize the seriousness of the problem. That evening the Sophi clones gathered at an abandoned place. While Un was reminding the other versions to avoid wasting energy, suddenly a voice called 5 names. Undu, Trois Quatre, and Sink came before a desk. Before them was a person who looked like a dried corpse. He declared their goal was to eliminate Blade to prove the strength of artificial heroes was stronger than real heroes. On a clear moonlit night, Sophi pushed open the door to Blade's room. He and little Chulain were sleeping soundly. Sophi approached the two when suddenly from under the blanket Lona jumped up in a defensive stance. When she realized it was Sophi, she relaxed and assured her that Lona would protect her master with all her might. But Sophi herself also had her own plan. She also wanted to ensure Blade's safety in her own way. When Sophi stepped out of the dormitory, she met her version Un. At this moment Sophi wondered why the experiment should have ended long ago. but unexplained they were kept to complete a mission. Their lifespan was very short, so they didn't have much time. Safai was still asking why they had to follow that mission instead of deciding what they wanted, when Un had already charged up intending to subdue her. But Safai at this point was already at a higher level, so she easily knocked down and pinned Un. Safai didn't finish her off but let Un go. On another side, Blade's whole group already had their own plan. The whole group along with little Sync, who was also a Safai clone, entered the virtual world. Sync's eyes lit up seeing Blade. She chased everyone intensely. Before Blade could run, the little girl had already thrown a punch, making him collapse unconscious. But the little girl kept punching and hitting Blade continuously, making him log out of the virtual world. When he woke up, the whole group was happy the plan succeeded. They tricked Sync into thinking she had eliminated the hero. After Sync discovered she had been played by the group, she angrily destroyed the school dormitory area, determined to chase Blade no matter what. Lona, flying beside, advised him to run to another area for safety. Then suddenly a frenzied Safai version charged out. So Blade was chased by both versions, running for his life. Lona even thought of a terrible solution. She used some insulting actions, making the clones even more furious. Up ahead, Arnett was encouraging the mage girls to prepare for battle. When she saw Blade and Lona running over, they immediately cast magic but failed. The frenzied version charged up and was knocked away by Arnett, but Sync almost punched her in the face. Fortunately, Blade timely used magic to push the little girl back. Before Blade's group could celebrate, suddenly the two versions held hands tightly, creating a huge hole, then both fainted. Everything around was sucked in. Some female students were almost swallowed by the black hole. Blade timely saved them from disaster. Safai then appeared. She used her own ability to absorb the black hole, then also fainted in Blade's arms. The other Safai versions also appeared, but they didn't intend to eliminate Blade. They just silently took the two fainted versions away. That night at the infirmary, Safai woke up under Blade's care. She first worried about her friend's safety, then revealed those other Safais were defective versions created before her. She was very sad because she was saved, but no one could save those versions. When she heard Blade wanted to study with them, Safai strongly objected and revealed that hatred for Blade had been deeply ingrained in those versions' brains. They couldn't disobey orders. She cried, feeling sorry for her remaining sisters. Blade, seeing this, comforted and hugged her. After a while, when he had fallen asleep, she also folded the patient clothes to leave. At the principal's office, Blade's friend group was standing opposite him. Hearing him report that Safai had requested to drop out, Arnett was extremely angry and immediately questioned why the principal didn't stop Safai. He outwardly mentioned that dropping out was also a student's right. He had no right to interfere with her decision. While Arnett still wanted to argue, Blade had stopped her. He showed her the principal's helplessness, making her immediately less angry. She swore to bring Safai back. The principal reminded them how they could find Safai. Suddenly Jessica pulled a note from between her peaks. She said it recorded places where Safai would likely go. The principal reminded them it wasn't random that the girl went alone because she didn't want everyone to get blood on their hands. The way to deal with those versions and stop them from assassinating Blade was to completely eliminate them. He advised the friend group to think carefully about that. That evening, Blade stood contemplating before the dormitory. He carried a sword on his back, intending to find Safai. Suddenly, Lona and Little Dragon Shulane and Mao also flew to him. They expressed Safai was a friend, so everyone wanted to save her. The whole group walked a distance when on the other side of the dormitory gate. The remaining friend group had been waiting there. Blade also anticipated this. He was very happy to go with his friends. At this moment, Safai was at the original abandoned house, the shelter of the Safai clones before. She didn't find them and disappointedly was about to leave. Suddenly above her, Arnett, riding the giant monster bird, flew over to stop her. Safai, seeing this, tried to slip away. Arnett didn't give her a chance and jumped down. She advised Safai, but she appeared mysterious. She revealed there was a secret she had never told everyone. After a while, the whole group gathered. Safai stood in the house narrating everything. She was a product of an artificial hero project. She was the 12th clone of a girl named Safai, and also the most complete product of the project. Later, the project participants were arrested, so the project should have ended. But some versions and data had been leaked. Someone had secretly raised and assigned missions to them. The leaked versions were those 5 Safai clones. Their purpose was to surpass the hero. The whole group, except those who knew Blade had hero status, all wondered why those versions targeted him, almost making Blade expose his secret. Safai at this moment expressed things she had always kept deep in her heart. She didn't want to implicate everyone because of her past. Safai was very grateful to Blade's group for letting her live and be happy like a human. Now she wanted to end everything herself. Hearing this, Arnett bonked her head several painful times. She said very touching words comforting little Safai, making her smile. Before Arnett could promise everyone would go with Safai to eliminate the versions, Blade had cut in because he thought killing them wasn't the solution. Sapphire revealed because they were modified their lifespan wasn't long. Blade mentioned there must be some way to help the versions instead of dealing with them. He stood up calling everyone in the group to contribute strength to complete this mission together. The whole friend group agreed excitedly. Blade asked Elias for a solution, surprising him greatly at being trusted. So Elias mysteriously revealed he had a strategy. At the Sapphire clone's base, Un was waking up her sisters with threats. Their mysterious master continuously brainwashed the girls. They only had one goal, which was to kill Blade. Suddenly, two Sapphires walked in carrying a letter sent from an unknown source. She opened it, and somehow the letter had some challenging words and childish drawings, making her extremely upset. She decided to settle everything today. At the arena, Blade was waiting for Sapphire's versions. The original was sitting in the stands. Sapphire was very certain the versions would come. Indeed, after a while, the Sapphire clones fully armed with weapons arrived. Without any unnecessary words, they all charged up to fight Blade. It turned out Elias' strategy was very smart. It was to use Blade's strength to drain the clone's energy. From there, they could capture them alive and find the mastermind, force him to reveal information on how to modify the Sapphire clones so they could live normal lives. At this moment, suddenly Blade was charged by a clone who knocked his weapon away. Then the remaining clones gathered and charged together. Arnett was very worried, wanting to help Blade, but was stopped by Sapphire. She had great faith in his abilities. Below on the arena, Blade was using a shield to block all 5 people. Suddenly, the frenzied Sapphire version used the artificial hero ability. She immediately reversed gravity, making Blade continuously slam against the ground, causing him to fall and get injured. Meanwhile, the gentle Sapphire immediately split into many versions, charging to finish him off. But Jessica timely threw Blade a battery capsule. Blade timely inserted it and used shock waves to eliminate all the split versions. Then Clay threw Blade another battery. He used it to activate the drag smash technique, eliminating the remaining gentle Sapphire versions, making her exhausted and faint. The depressed Sapphire, who was Twa, angrily charged up. But the friend group supported Blade with another energy capsule, allowing him to easily create a barrier blocking the attack, making Twa immediately faint from exhaustion. Little Sync, another Sapphire version, charged up. Arnett only managed to throw the energy capsule halfway to him when Sync had already attacked, making Blade miss catching the battery. Fortunately, Sapphire used her ability to grab the capsule. She also lifted Blade to a safe distance. Then together they released energy to knock out Sync. Finally, only Un remained. She carried a sword charging forward. But Blade had released a fire shock wave, destroying an entire wall. Yet she still stood proudly as if there was no parting. Blade kept calling, but Un showed no movement. Suddenly, she revealed time was up. Her arm and body parts fell apart. Blade panicked and ran to catch Un. She reminded him the versions only had 14 days of operation, and this evening's sunset was the deadline. When Blade called Elias, he was also helpless because they had already pushed themselves to survive until now. Claire tried using her power, but couldn't heal Un's wounds. Blade thought of the mastermind behind this, but Elias revealed the shocking truth that he had logged out long ago. Actually, there was no order here at all. Elias was also very desperate because he wasn't a genius. He couldn't race against time to research modifications for them because these clones' lifespans were already exhausted. But Sapphire at this moment had requested everyone gather her sisters in one place. She encouraged them to keep trying. Blade himself also created great encouragement for the clones. He said as long as they were alive, surely one day not too far they would surpass him. Hearing this, Un and her sisters were also satisfied and agreed. She activated the artificial hero ability. Sapphire told Blade to help her stabilize the energy source. She told him to put their souls into her heart before everyone's eyes. A beam of light flew up, then vanished into the air. At the Academy infirmary afterwards, Blade was being bandaged all over. Un in Sapphire's body came to visit him. The other versions all really wanted to meet Blade, but first they gave the body to Sapphire to talk with Blade. She was very happy with her sisters. Some time later at the Academy arena, Blade's friend group was struggling before the practical training session with the magical beast. Even strong ones like Chulain or Arnett were no match for it. At this moment, Sapphire entered the battle with her sisters, using clone power to gang up on the magical beast. Other members also charged up, but couldn't do anything to the monster. Yet the principal wasn't worried because the very next second, Blade gave the monster a palm strike, making it collapse. Everyone was extremely frustrated at Blade's innate strength and cluelessness. The guy was eating curry cutlet while watching the commotion, signaling a better future ahead.